The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk on a topic which is pretty interesting, which is I think everyone is very eager and nervous about it. A lot of the customers have reached out to us and asked, what are we going to do about e-invoicing in Malaysia since it's mandatory, even though it's been pushed to 1st August, right? I mean, it's still now barely 10 months more to actually the first go live in phase one. So what we have done today is we have gone through several rounds of discussion with LHDN themselves and also MDEC as well. Our colleagues have also met up with MDEC's team this morning, where they actually came out and then have wanted some requirement gathering and so on and so forth, right? So we're sharing some of these discussions with all of you today through Kevin, our financial expert over here from Sage, and then basically Elvin will be continuing to discuss with us in terms of a little bit more of the life cycle policies and so on, and lastly a little bit of FAQ and to close it off. Okay, so again, I just want to get before this session started. I already have quite a few questions that was listed out. So if all of you do have questions later, do type it in. We might not be able to answer all the questions. At least you type it in. We will be able to reply you after that as well, in a sense. So do put it in. Don't wait until the end. Whenever you have a question, put it in. I'll just reply the first question first. Which I believe everyone will be interested in. Will the recording of today be sent to you? Yes, the recording will be sent to you. And after this process is done, normally if you have joined our previous webinar, you'll most likely be tomorrow in that sense, okay? And today will not be a training. Okay, this is not a training. We have not completed the e-invoicing yet because LHGN themselves and MDEC have not completely completed the specification yet, and that their testing site is not up yet for us to do any testing as well with the testing site. So this is more of what we know. We want to share with you and how our approach will tackle in terms of e-invoicing to let everyone have a peace of mind in the sense that we are on top of this, and Sage Asia and Sage ourselves will be building this e-invoicing and making sure that we will meet the timeline in a sense where to get all of you to be on board. But one thing I think all of you need to understand, because of the timeline, a short timeline that we are looking into, we will be imposing where we will only be supporting of our latest patches on this e-invoicing and not every single version that we have in that sense. We'll talk about this a little bit more in detail later, but without further ado, I will pass on to Kevin to bring us through in terms of the overall concept of e-invoicing and how we're going to do about it. Kevin, over to you.
All right, thanks Chitong, thank you. All right, okay, very good afternoon to everybody. All right, welcome to our webinar for e-invoicing in Malaysia. All right, so as we all know, right, our government is planning to implement the e-invoicing start from next year. Okay, so for this, right, so we are trying to get our customer and partner to understand what is the purpose of the e-invoice, what will be the flow, and also, right, what are the requirements in Sage X3 to ease your implementation, right, of the Malaysia e-invoicing from next year onward. All right, okay, so we shall start now. Okay, okay, so this is the agenda for today. All right, so the agenda, right, is for the X3 part, right, we are going to get ready with e-invoicing. We'll do a introduction, then the background, so the timeline of the implementation of e-invoicing for Malaysia. All right, so what are the required fields or informations, right, in Sage X3, and finally, right, how the e-invoicing works. Okay, then after that, we'll pass over to my colleague, all right, as Alvin. All right, so he will introduce to you, right, what are the security vulnerability, security best practices, and Sage X3. Then after that, we'll go into the FAQs and questions, all right? All right, so without further ado, right, okay, so what is the Malaysia e-invoicing all about? Okay, as we all know, right, the government or the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri Malaysia, right, has decided, right, to implement the e-invoicing for Malaysia start from next year onwards. So what is it, right? So the e-invoicing, right, is the digital representation, right, of a transaction between a supplier and a buyer. So a supplier, right, which is in our formula here today would be you as a customer, the person or the company that using the Sage X3. The buyer will be your customer. All right, the buyer will be your customer. All right, so the e-invoicing, right, will replace the traditional paper or electronic documents such as invoice, credit note, or debit note, which means that, right, once the e-invoicing has been implemented, right, all right, so the e-invoice, right, you all can email the invoice direct to your customer, right? It will replace the traditional paper or the electronic documents, all right? But you can still use the traditional paper, but make sure, right, you need to present, right, in the traditional paper, right, the barcodes and also the e-invoicing identification number. Okay, so the e-invoicing also, right, will do a validation, right, of the e-invoice by the LHDN, or we call it Inland Revenue IRBM, is done simultaneously, which means that, right, once the e-invoicing is passed over to the LHDN, right, the validation, right, will be done instantly. All right, so according to LHDN, right, they will try to validate the e-invoice by the supplier, okay, which is you, right, within 72 hours, okay, maximum. But this is, they are doing it instantly, but the maximum time will be within 72 hours, all right? Okay, what is the purpose of the e-invoicing, right? Is to safeguard against data tampering. So, this is the purpose, all right? So, this is the purpose. Okay, so next question, right? Okay, so what are the accepted format, right, by the LHDN for e-invoicing? So in technical perspective, right, only XML file or JSON or JSON file, right, will be accepted. So which means that, right, when you hand over your e-invoicing to Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, right, you only accept the XML file or the JSON file of your invoice. They don't accept PDF, Microsoft Words, JPEG, or any hard copy or email. They don't accept that. So far, right, from what we know is only XML file and JSON file will be accepted. So take note of this, okay? All right, so there are 4 types of e-invoice transaction to prove the income and expenses, all right? There are 4 types. Okay, the first, of course, is the invoice. So everybody in this floor, right? So we all know what are the invoice, right? So basically the invoice is the commercial document, right, that itemize and record transaction between the supplier, which is you, and the buyer, which is your customer, right? Including self-insurance of e-invoice to document of an expenses such as a foreign supplier. Take note, right? So, right, if you sell your product to a foreign customer, right, you also need to submit e-invoicing. All right, not only for sales, right, conduct in Malaysia. Okay, all right, just to let you know on that. Okay, this is for invoice. So, right, so in terms of e-invoice, right, if you are using Sage X3, right, so the invoice, right, is inclusive of your sales invoice and also your customer BP invoice. So if you are a Sage X3 customer or user, right, or partner, right, take note that this sales invoice, right, is applied to both your sales invoice and also your customer BP invoice. Okay, okay. So number 2, right, is the credit note. All right. So the credit note, right, is also part of the e-invoice transaction. In the event, right, if you have any adjustment or any discount that you want to give to your customer to apply to their invoice, right, you also need to send this through the e-invoicing portal to the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri. Okay, just to let you know that. Okay, so the credit note, right, is also pertaining to the sales module credit note and also the customer BP invoice module credit note as well. All right, just to let you know that. Okay, Next will be the debit note. Okay, so as you all know, the debit note, right, is also part of the e-invoice transaction that you need to submit to the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri as part of the e-invoicing process. Okay, so the debit note, right, okay, is similar to the invoice, as you all know. Okay, so I will not stress more on the debit note. I think everybody will know what are these lah. Okay, so finally, right, will be refund. So I believe, right, the refund here, right, is more to those whole system, you know. Okay, but in terms of Sage X3, right, in terms of Sage X3, right, most of our refund or any adjustment, right, you use credit notes. All right, unless there is a refund of payments. All right, so for refunds, okay, so for refunds, right, I think we still need to get more clarifications from the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri. Okay, just to let you know that. Okay, I will move to the next one. All right, I'll move to the next slide. Okay, so when are we going to implement the e-invoicing? So this is one of the basic questions, right, that everybody is asking us. So to ensure a smooth transition, right, the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, right, or the government, right, will not implement the e-invoicing simultaneously in one go. So it already breaks into 3 sections. Number 1, right, would be, right, those companies which have an annual turnover or sales, right, that is more than 100 million. All right, initially it will start on the 1st of June 2024, which is next year. However, right, based on our recent budget, okay, the Prime Minister announced that, right, it will postpone to 1st of August. Okay, it will postpone to the 1st of August. So the second phase of the e-invoicing, right, will start from 1st of January 2025. The last budget, right, the budget that we had 2 weeks ago, it did not specify the phase 2. So we assume that phase 2 still 1st of January 2025. And this is for those companies, right, where their annual sales or turnover, right, which is more than 50 million, but less than 100 million, which means like if your sales is between 50 and 100 million, then you fall under the phase 2 category, where you start to implement your e-invoicing, right, from 1st of January 2025 onwards. Okay, so the phase 3, which is start from 1st of January 2026. Okay, so this is for those company, right, where the revenue that is more than 25 million and up to 50 million. Okay, up to 50 million. This is phase 3. So the final one would be, right, on the 1st of January 2027 will be everybody already. So by the time, right, 2027 January, right, all entities or companies, right, okay, will have to implement sales invoices already. All right. So taxpayer can opt to voluntarily participate in implementation at an earlier date, regardless of their annual turnover. So which means that, right, let's say, for example, right, you can participate, right, earlier if you want. Okay, let's say, for example, right, if let's say, for example, if your revenue falls between 50 million and 100 million, if you want to participate in August 2024 of next year, you also can do that. So it's voluntarily. All right, this is what according to LHDN, this is what we know. Okay, so we go to the next slide. Okay, how do you determine, right, whether your sales or your turnover falls within that category? So according to the LHDN, so there are 3 categories here. So if you're a taxpayer, okay, so taxpayer, right, and then you have an audited financial statement, it is based on your annual turnover or sales, right, okay, of your 2022 financial statement, your annual turnover, not your net income, not your profit, your sales, okay, your sales. Okay, number 2 is, right, if you are a taxpayer, okay, without audited financial statement, right, it's based on your annual revenue reported in your tax return year assessment 2022. Basically, this is your tax return. Okay, so it could be your BE form or okay, I think your BE form, right? Our income tax return form. Okay. So number 3 would be change of accounting year or financial year in 2022. Taxpayer turnover or revenue will be prorated to a 12-month period for the purpose of determining the e-invoice implementation date. So let's say, right, for this, right, if your financial year got changes, it will based on the 12 months period. Okay, it will based on the 12 months period. So let's say, right, suddenly there's a change in your financial period, okay, let's say to September 2022, right? So means, right, you will based on your sales, right, from October 2021 to September 2022. All right, just to let you know, this is so means that it's based on the accounting year end of the financial year end. All right, financial year. Okay, so we're moving to the next slide here. Okay, so what are the required e-invoicing, right? What are the required field, right? So at the moment when we do this presentation, so these are the required field. Those in white color, right? Those in white color, number 1 to number 40, right? These are the required field or the mandatory field, right, that we need to submit to the lembaga hasil dalam negeri in our e-invoicing. So supplier name. So the supplier name, which is you, okay, which is you. All right, you yourself. All right. Okay. The buyer name is your customer. Okay. So it's your customer. So let's say, right, if you are using Sage X3, right, supplier name is the company, the buyer name is the customer. All right. So just to let you know that. Okay. Then the supplier details, which is you need to have your supplier tax identification number. I call it TIN. This is a compulsory field. This is your tax identification number, which is the tax registration number with the lembaga hasil dalam negeri. So your supplier registration number, all right? So then your SST registration number. So if you're in tourism, you need to submit your tourism tax registration number. So your email, your website, okay? So your MSIC code, right? And your business activity description is also part of the mandatory field, okay? So the next one will be the buyer tax identification number. All right. So I will not go through every single field inside here. It will take a long time to go through. So I think this session, like Jitong said, is recorded, right? Maybe you all can refer to this. All right. So okay, you can refer to this. All right. So these are the one. So basically, right, most of the field inside here, right, okay, is already available in Sage X3. It's already available in Sage X3. So what are the additional field that we are going to create in Sage X3? Later, I will show you what are we going to create additional field in Sage X3, okay, to cater for the e-invoicing. All right, to cater for the e-invoicing. Okay, so now, so this is the additional field, but this additional field, right, okay, but they are not, it's only applicable, right, for certain transaction only, right? Certain transaction only, like the shipping, you have a shipping recipient name. If you ship to a different company than your sales invoice, then you need to have this. All right, you need to have this. Okay, next. Okay, in e-invoicing, right, as you know that there are a few new fields that in Sage X3 that we need to create. So currently, right, we know that there is no business registration number. Okay, there is no business registration number. So we'll create a new field for the business registration number and also the SST or GST registration number. So the reason why I put /GST, right, in the event in the future, if the government need to implement GST, right, definitely the GST number will replace with SST. All right, just to let you know that. Okay, in the event, we do not know when is it. All right, so for as you know that we also create the business registration field in the business partner and also the SST or GST registration number, right, in the business partner. Why do we put in business partner, right? We don't want to put directly in customer because, right, we may not know, right, any changes. This will apply to the supplier as well. So to the supplier, right? Okay, so we never know. So the reason why we put in business partner, right, is to safeguard, right? So we do not have to create additional field in other table. So that's why, right, we put this into the business partner table. Okay, just to let you all know that. So in business partner, right, if you go to business partner in the future, right, when you implement e-invoicing, take note that the business registration number or the SST, GST registration number, right, will be inside business partner. It will not show in your customer. It will also not show in your supplier, right? It will be in business partner. All right. Okay. So out of this, okay. So we also lembaga hasil dalam negeri, right? You also need to know, right, what are the e-invoice status? Okay, so inside the sales invoice screen, or inside the e-invoice screen, and also the customer BP invoice screen, right? We will create a new field called the e-invoice status. So this e-invoice status, right, is also to facilitate you as a user to know what is the status of the e-invoice, whether the invoice has been submitted, has been approved, or has been rejected by the lembaga hasil dalam negeri. All right. So basically, currently we are already created 4 statuses. One is called not submitted. Not submitted means, right, you prepare the invoice, but you have not submit for e-invoicing yet. You have not submit yet. Okay. Number 2, once you submit already, right, the status become submitted. Submitted means, like, it's still pending for approval from the lembaga hasil dalam negeri. Okay. So once the lembaga hasil dalam negeri, right, has already reverted, you'll be either approved or rejected. So it will change. So basically, right, from time to time, the status will change, depends on the flow. Okay, depends on the flow. So, right, and then, right, we will also create a new table to keep track of the flow from one status to another status, and also there will be a timestamp. Okay, and also there will be a timestamp. You show when it is submitted, when it is approved or rejected. Okay, and when it will be resubmitted. All right. Okay. Then the other new field in the sales invoice and BP customer BP invoice, right, is the LHDN unique ID number. So what is the LHDN unique ID number, right? Okay, as you know that when you create your invoice, you have your own number. You have your own number. So once the invoice is submitted to the lembaga hasil dalam negeri for validation, right? When the lembaga hasil dalam negeri, right, revert back to you, is approved already, right? They will give you a unique number for each invoice. That is the unique number. So this number, right, you must make sure you display into your invoice when you send to your customer, right? Each invoice, right, each invoice will have a unique ID number. And then this ID number will be given by the LHDN. Okay, will be given by the LHDN. So these are the new field. All right. And then, right, inside your sales invoice and customer BP invoice, right? Okay, you will see this invoice number. Take note, right? This unique ID number, right, will only be given to you once your e-invoice has been approved by the lembaga hasil dalam negeri. Okay. Okay. So I move into the next slide. Okay, what are the existing fields inside X3, right, to be used as LHDN identification number? Currently, right, in our company, we have a field called company tax ID number, or the field name is called CRN. So we will use this field, right, as the tax identification number. See, we try not to create too many fields in X3. So whatever field that we have, right, that is similar to LHDN requirement, then we will fulfill it. So these are the field that we found is the one that is similar. So as you know, right, the tax identification number TIN, right, is a compulsory field. So we went through this system. We found out that the company tax ID number, right, is basically, right, is identical to the LHDN TIN. All right. Same thing for the site tax ID number in business partner. So, right, please take note, right, our customers, right, Sage X3 user and also partner, right, you need to go and check in your company and in your business partner, right, currently what do you use for this field? Actually, this field, right, company tax ID number and the site tax ID number, right, is already available in X3 already. It's already available. Just to let you know that. All right. So make sure, right, in the future, right, to implement the e-invoicing, right, we will be using, okay, these two fields, right, as the TIN. Okay. So why do we put the TIN into the business partner field, right? Because, right, the customer TIN, right, is also part of the field that the e-invoicing required. Okay, TIN. Okay. Just to let you know, right, we found out from LHDN recently that, okay, if your customer doesn't have a tax identification number, if the customer is a sole proprietor or individual, right? Right? So LHDN just inform us, right? You can replace the TIN with your NRIC, which is our IC number. Okay, which is our IC number. All right, just to let you know that. So in the event, right, if you have a question, say, what if my customer don't have TIN, right? So which is the thing that we need to submit to LHDN? So LHDN just revert to us, say that it will be our IC number. Okay, so if the company got TIN, then you need to submit TIN. If don't have, then you use IC. Okay, all right. We move to the next slide. Okay, so right in e-invoicing, right? So what are the two mechanisms, right, to do the e-invoice submission? Number one is a more direct approach, okay, where it's called My Invoice Portal. This is the portal, right, hosted by the LHDN, right, Malaysia, okay, and then as an option that available to taxpayer with no cost, which means that, right, if you have decided to use the My Invoice Portal, right, you have to key in, you have to go into LHDN portal, open the My Invoice and key in the invoice information yourself. Like for example, PIN number, address, email, you know, your item code, your item description, your sales amount, your quantity. This one you have to key in yourself. If you're using My Invoice Portal, you have to do it like that. This is how you submit. It means that you go into the LHDN portal, you key in one by one. Okay, this is one method. Okay, number two, right, is using the API. We call it Application Programming Interface. So actually, right, the API is a set of programming code, right, that enable direct data transmission between taxpayer system into the My Invoice system. Okay, so this is the one that we are doing it. Okay, this is Sage X3, right, is doing API. So let's say, right, you are using this one. So which means that, right, from here, right, all your invoice that you create or credit note that you created, right, it will be direct interface into Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri e-invoice portal, right, using the API. So today we are stressing more on number two. Okay, we are not going to stress more on number one. Number one, if you can do it manually. Actually, number one is more like a manual exercise. Okay. Number two is using the system, just push over. All right. Okay. So what's the difference? Okay, what's the difference, right? As you can see, on the left hand side is the My Invoice portal. On the right hand side is the API, or you call it the Application Programming Interface, which is a direct integration with Sage X3. Okay. So right, single invoice creation, like just now, you need to define all the required field every time you create a new invoice if you're using My Invoice portal. So for API, right, the required field will be auto-populated by the system every time you generate your e-invoice. All right. So then, right, okay, in terms of if you have e-invoice batch creation, generate certain number of e-invoice in batch by uploading, okay, to a defined layout file to a portal, right, containing the necessary e-invoice information. So for API, right, all your invoices will be submitted into a batch, There is no layout required. All required fields are auto-generated by the system. Okay. Then, if you're using the My Invoice portal, how do you know what is your status, right? Only registered user are able to check the status of e-invoice in My Invoice portal. But for API, right, you can check your status, right, in X3. Remember just now, right, I mentioned that in our sales invoice or the customer BP invoice, right, we have one thing called the status. So this is the one. So from here, right, you can directly go to Sage X3 and check on the status of the e-invoicing, right? Rather than go into the My Invoice portal to check, right? You can check from here, right? In terms of security concern, of course, My Invoice portal is taken care by LHDN, because why? You log into their portal, you manually key in. But in terms of API, right, will be taken care by Sage X3. Okay, all the security. All right. So the e-invoice notification, right? Notification will send via email to the registered user. So if you registered with the My Invoice portal, right? So any invoice that you submitted using My Invoice, so the notification will send to your email. All right. And then for API, once notification received by Sage API, right, you can choose to notify via email, okay, within, or use the notification, right, within your organization. As you know that in Sage X3, we have one function called notification. All right, you also can use that function to notify the respective user, right, what is the status of the e-invoice, or you also can use email workflow. Basically, this is our workflow. All right. In terms of support, right? In terms of support, of course, my invoice using my invoice portal. So you need to contact LHDN for any support issues. But if you are using the Sage X3, right, API, right, so you will get a support from either the Sage X3 partner, right? Okay. Any issue related to my Malaysia e-invoicing, okay, from your partners. Okay. So now we go through the flow, how it works, right? Okay. Okay, take note, right? In the flow, we will have one thing called supplier. We have one thing called buyer later. So to our customer here, right, in Sage X3 customer that we have here in the floor today, right, you are a supplier. Okay, take note, right? You are a supplier. So you are a supplier. So in here, right, we have one thing called the supplier. So it means that you will create invoice, debit note, credit note, right, via Sage X3 sales invoice or customer BP invoice. So once you already create the invoice, right, okay, the invoice will be, okay, port over to LHDN e-invoicing, right, using the Sage API. Okay, so like Sage will create the API. This is what we are going to do. This is what Sage, we are going to do this one. So we are going to use this one, right? Then the Sage API will interface the e-invoice to Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri Malaysia. Okay, so your invoice will be processed and converted into XML or JSON format. Remember just now I said, right, LHDN will only accept XML or JSON file. Okay, none other cannot. Okay, only these two. All right, and also the required fields. Okay, okay. So the final format will be settled later by Sage, because currently, right, I believe LHDN, right, has already more or less finalized the necessary field. All right, and then so far the XML and the JSON is the format lah. So of course we do not know when our LHDN will change to a new one. We never know, but so far we know, right, definitely XML and JSON file is one of it lah. Okay, is one of it. Okay, so this is the flow. How you create your e-invoice, you submit to LHDN. Okay, this is invoice creation and submission. Okay, so once your e-invoice, right, has already been validated by the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, so LHDN, right, will return a validation link with the unique number, LHDN unique number. Remember just now I said, right, the unique number, right? Okay, so it will send to you. Okay, it will send to you. Then, right, your invoice status will be displayed on the Sage X3 screen, which means that, right, once the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri has already validated or approved the invoice, right, the status will be displayed in Sage X3 screen, in your invoice screen, together with your unique number, LHDN unique number or unique identification number. All right, so you are the supplier. So after that, right, you are able to, okay, you are able to send the invoice, right, to your customer, which is the buyer. All right, okay, so right, the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, right, will also send, right, from what we know, right, the notification, okay, via email to both the supplier and buyer, right, indicating the invoice is successfully validated. Which is, right, LHDN, right, will also send a notification to the buyer, because when we submit our e-invoice to LHDN, right, the customer emails is also inside there. It's also part of it. I think it's also part of it. All right. So that's why, right, they are able to do that. Okay. Okay. Just to let you know that. Okay. So we go to the next one, step 3. Okay, sharing of the e-invoices. Okay, so right, means that once your e-invoice has been approved by the Lembaga Hasil Dalam Negeri, then only you send the invoice to your customer. Okay, from what we know, right, you can only send the invoice to your customer, right, once the invoice is approved. Okay, once the invoice is approved. All right, so this is the one. Okay, so here, right, is where you share your invoice to your buyer. Okay, to your customer, okay, using the API. All right. Take note now. Inside the invoice, right? When you send the invoice to your customer, right? You need to have two new fields. Right? One is called the unique identification number, just now which I mentioned earlier. Okay, this number is given by the LHDN, right, to identify the respective invoices. Okay, it's a unique number. So you need to show this, right, inside the invoice that you give to your customer, right? Because they need to use this number, right, when they corresponds back to LHDN. Okay, just to let you know that. All right. In addition, right, LHDN, right, will also send to us the QR code. Okay, there will be a QR code. So this QR code, right, is also need to display in the invoice. Okay, so then maybe the customer, right, they can use their QR scanner to send the QR code to get the information about the invoices. All right, just to let you know. So LHDN, right, other than using the unique identification number, they also provide the QR code. All right, this QR code also reply back from the LHDN. Okay, all right. Okay, like I said just now, right? Upon receiving your invoice, right, buyer has 72 hours to reject or cancel the invoice. So let's say, right, if your customer, so means that receive your invoice, right, approved by the LHDN, right, they have 72 hours to reject or cancel the invoice. All right, they have. Okay, so in this case, right, okay, later there's a flow for cancellation. There's a flow for cancellation. Okay, so remember, right, these are the format. Okay, this is not a standard format by LHDN. LHDN didn't say that. So far, with what we know, right, there is no standard format you must follow LHDN. You can still use your own invoice format, but you need to provide your unique identification number and also the QR code. Okay, also the QR code. So from here, right, there's also a timestamp. So far, we have not confirmed, right, whether the timestamp, right, the approval date or the approval time, right, by the LHDN, right, is it a mandatory field or not? We have not confirmed that yet. Okay, so far we only know that the unique identification number and the QR code, right, is a mandatory. Okay, it's a mandatory. Okay, so your invoice format so far, you can still use back your invoice format, like I said just now, but please make sure, right, you embedded the unique identification number and the QR code inside your invoice. Okay. Okay. Next. So if the customer reject, okay, if the customer reject the invoice, okay, so they will have to inform LHDN. Then LHDN will send a notification to Sage X3 using our API. Then from here, right, we will issue a credit note. Okay, this is so it means like in the e-invoice processes, right, the customer has the choice to reject the invoice within 72 hours. Okay, they can use the LHDN portal, right? Okay, to do so. Okay. Okay, once the invoice has been rejected, right? Okay, by the customer or LHDN, right? The rejection status will also display in the Sage X3 screen in your invoice. Meaning that, right, when you open your customer BP invoice or your sales invoice, right, if the invoice is rejected, right, then, right, the status will show rejected. Okay, inside the status screen of the e-invoice. All right. Okay, so far this is my final presentations for the e-invoice in Malaysia side. Okay, so okay, thank you for your time. All right, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, then he will take over from here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. So today my section will not be on e-invoicing, because my colleague Kevin has done a very good job on that. So basically today I'd like to begin by looking at the risks that's associated with security vulnerabilities. So in today's context, right, as more businesses harness the power of centralized data, they become more valuable cyber targets. When an ERP system experiences a security vulnerability, it can put customers' sensitive information, such as their personal and financial data, at risk. Okay, cyber criminals can exploit these vulnerabilities to gain unauthorized access to the system, steal confidential information, or engage in malicious activities such as fraud, identity theft, and ransomware attacks. In addition to the potential financial harm, customers may also experience inconvenience and frustration if the ERP system is disrupted due to a security breach. For instance, if the system is down, customers may be unable to access their accounts, make payments, or receive products or services they have purchased. Overall, security vulnerabilities in ERP systems can have significant implications for customers, including financial losses, inconvenience, and loss of trust in the company. Here, we can see that there were a number of security vulnerabilities which occurred since year 2020. In year 2020, there was the critical security vulnerability. The following year, we were exposed to the MongoDB and Apache vulnerability, which affected version 11. At Sage, however, you can be assured that we take privacy and data security very seriously. We work closely across Sage teams to identify and help mitigate any associated issues as they arise. When we become aware of potential security risks in X3 that may impact customers, we will release fixes for immediate implementation. This is evidenced when we released the Sage X3 security update and Syracuse hotfix in year 2020. Having seen those security breaches happen in the past, it is therefore critical to pay attention to the security of your systems and implementation. If you use Sage X3 Cloud, you get maximum security for your data without any action. However, if you choose to install Sage X3 as an on-premise instance, you must take a multi-layered, industry-proven approach to keep your data where it belongs and as secure as possible. To illustrate my point, let's explore the recommended deployment architecture of an on-premises installation. The architecture you implement is key to your security, especially if your system can be accessed from the public internet. For instance, you are recommended to use HTTPS for production instances since X3 is a web application and thus it must be accessed using an HTTPS connection. You are recommended to keep your system always up to date by applying the latest system and software fixes. This includes the latest Sage X3 patches. Our updates can provide enhancements to security, performance, and functionalities. You are also recommended to use local firewalls on your X3 servers or network layer controls to lock any IP port that is not needed for X3 operation or user access, and so on. I will not elaborate further, but you are always welcome to view our security best practices at our Sage X3 Online Help Center. The Sage X3 Lifecycle Policy specifies how long maintenance will be available for a release of Sage X3, from when the product is available for purchase to when it reaches the end of maintenance state. It is designed to provide consistent and predictable guidelines on maintenance of Sage X3 versions throughout the life of the product. When a version of X3 is made generally available, it begins a journey through the lifecycle maintenance stages. We begin with the current maintenance stage. This is the first lifecycle stage and the most robust and complete level of maintenance available for that version of X3. As you can see, compliance updates, new features, enhancements, bug fixes, and hot fixes are all included here. When the current maintenance stage ends, we move into the standard maintenance stage. This is the second life cycle stage. Here, you can clearly see that compliance updates, new features, enhancements, and bug fixes will no longer be included. However, Sage will continue to provide hot fixes for level 0 or level 1 defects. As the standard maintenance expires, we move into the final stage, which is also known as the extended maintenance stage. This is the third life cycle stage and an extension of the current maintenance stage, whereby Sage will continue to provide hot fixes for level 0 or level 1 defects, but subjected to approval process. Regardless of the life cycle stage, you can find assistance to the Sage X3 release through our knowledge base, online help, and Sage communities. It is important to note that at the end of Sage X3 lifecycle stages, a release of Sage X3 enters end of maintenance. Sage will no longer issue patches, updates, bug fixes, or security updates. Here, you can clearly see that all the earlier versions of Sage X3, including PU9, had entered end of maintenance. In fact, version 11 will also enter end of maintenance in about 5 months' time. As such, Sage strongly recommends that you stay current by accepting available updates within a specific time frame. That concludes my presentation. Now I will pass you over to my colleague Kevin, who will run the frequent asked question. Kevin, to you.
All right, thanks, Alvin. All right, okay, there are some questions, right, that you may ask, right? Okay, so these are some of the FAQ, right, or frequently asked questions, right? They has been frequently, asked recently, right? So will there any penalty, right, if I didn't comply with e-invoice? According to LHTN, there will be such penalty, but the details of this, right, we do not know yet. So we do not know what's the penalty. So maybe so far the guidelines has not come out yet. So maybe from time to time, right, you can check with LHTN what's the penalty. All right, so we do not know, but we know that there are penalty, but we do not know what is the penalty, how severe is, we do not know. So there is a 27 hours time frame for buyer to reject the supply invoice. How is this 72 hour calculated? So this means like just now I said, right? The buyer, or which is your customer, can reject the invoice within 72 hours. So this 72 hours is calendar day basis. So right, which is including weekend and public holiday. Means right, the 72 hours, right, is inclusive of Saturday, Sunday, and also public holiday. All right, inclusive. Okay, so how is Sage actually will handle the additional field required by the LHTN, such as TIN, right? I think just now I already mentioned. So the TIN number, right, you're using the tax ID number. So just now I already mentioned this, because as you know, the TIN number, right, is a mandatory field. So far, a lot of people asking about this TIN, So we have already tried to cater to this. So we're using the tax ID number in Sage X3. Okay. Next question, right? I do a lot of business using B2C. So B2C means, right, is business to customer. I just let you know, right? B2C, right? So B2B is business to business. B2G is business to government. Okay. So how do I get my customer's TIN number? Similar to case where overseas don't have, right? So according to LHTN, right, they will come back to this in the latest guideline. Like just now I said, right? Remember, some of your customer, right, can be a sole proprietor or individual. They do not have the TIN number or tax identification number. So according to LHTN, right, so for this, right, you can use the NRIC or IC number. So for overseas buyer, right, so for overseas buyer, so far we have not get any clear message from them yet. So from time to time we'll find out, okay, okay, so we need to know also, all right, just to let you know. So if you have a lot of business using B2C, like your customers are all individual or sole proprietor, so and they are in Malaysia, then you can use the IC number. Okay. So if you are doing a lot of business with B2B, business to business, that means like most of your customers are all sendirian berhad or maybe berhad, right? Or Mr. Company. So definitely they will have tax ID number, right? So they need to provide to you on that. Okay, just to let you know that. Okay, how can I implement Sage X3 E-invoicing module? Okay, just to let you know, right? We will only develop, right, the Malaysia e-invoicing module, right, from version 12 P32 onwards. Okay, so right, you need to make sure that, right, your Sage X3, right, is upgraded to version 12 P32 and above. So means like currently the latest version of X3, right, is version 12 V12, right? So we will start to develop from version 12 P32, right? P32 onwards. Okay. All right, Alvin. So for e-invoicing, right? Next question, right? How can I know what version in X3 I'm using? So let's say, right, if you are not sure, right, what version you're using, right, you can open your Sage X3 applications, all right? Then, right, you navigate to the administration utility update. Then you click on any data set, right, like in seed, whatever. Basically, normally you don't take seed, like you follow your own folder, like production or live, you know. Then from here, right, you have a pop-up. Then in the application section, right, you can determine what version that you are using. All right. So basically, right, so in this example here, right, so it is a, okay, version 12. Okay, so it's a version 12. All right. So R1 2023. So this is a V, so also known as V12 P32. All right, V12 P32. So we know about here. Okay. All right. So next. All right.
Okay. So next, thanks Kevin for sharing the frequent asked question. So I'll be running this last three frequent asked question with a continuation like what Kevin had mentioned, right? Our e-invoicing will only be built in our latest version V12 P32 onwards. So what to do if you realize that you're not, the you're using is not on V12 P32? Okay, you can contact us to upgrade your Sage X3 to V12 P32, or you may contact your business partner who can assist you further. Okay, so we have given you our toll-free number here, as well as my email address. Okay, please feel free to drop me an email if you need assistance on it. Okay, next question will be, what will be the pricing for the Malaysia e-invoicing module? Okay, Sage will announce the pricing when it is ready. Okay, with valid Sage cover customer, you will be able to purchase this module at an additional cost from Sage. So first prerequisite is you need to be on V12 P32. Next, you need to have valid Sage cover before you can purchase this additional module. Okay, so what should you do if you do not have a valid Sage cover? Okay, please contact us for a quotation to be prepared for you to prepare yourself to go on the V12 P32 upgrade, as well as be ready to purchase this e-invoicing module. Okay. Likewise, our toll-free number and my email address is shared here. Yeah, you can just contact me. Okay, so thanks,
Yep, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Kevin and Alvin for such an informative session. Right, we have a few questions over here. Some I have put in internally in a sense where if some of the questions that came up before we shared the FAQ, which most people would have asked, so that's why we have already done that. So I have replied that if we have the FAQ have answered or not. If it's not, please follow up on the question in a sense. So there's a few questions over here that we really want to pick it up and so that everyone understands this, right? So as there is supplier email field under the e-invoice where the Sage API was sent over. So it's asking whether would it be a generic email that will receive the notifications of the e-invoice portal and so on, that we can actually set up. I mean, by right, this will be a common email. I would assume that you will use a distribution email where several people will receive it instead of one person only. But by right, it should be a distribution email where you put it as a setup so that this person will be receiving across the board all the information from LHDN in that sense. So that will be the case that we would build it inside the X3 in that sense. Okay, in terms of the shared email for notifications and so on. Okay. So in terms of, there's another question in the sense where are we really required to have the QR code and invoice number on the invoice to be sent to the customers? For example, when they are individuals. So I think in the sense where, from what we understand for B2B, the barcode and the serial number, it's required. Okay. If it's B2C, that's still not clear yet because right now most of the information we have is B2B. Okay, so from what we understood is if it's B2C, then the TIN number should be the NRRC instead of the company. So but majority of the information that we are receiving right now is basically you should be having that in the invoice in a sense. But I will explore that for the customers, right, to reach out to your auditors or your tax advisors, right, to go in a little bit more deeper on this because for Sage solutions perspective, we will definitely include that in as a typical one that you could generate that within your invoice. But if it's not needed, we are not in a position to answer that where your specific business doesn't require this or require this. So that's I think getting your tax agent to have that further clarification will be better in that sense. Okay, so that's a bit of that. I think a lot of people will be asking that as well. So how the API integrations of incoming invoice into X3 in terms of sharing. So I believe Kevin did some sharing on his end as well. Okay, so this morning we have also attended a MDEC session where there might be some changes in the API as well, which MDEC will be reaching out to us and sharing more info. So bear with us. Once we have more info from MDEC as well in terms of how the API needs to change because MDEC is in place right now, then we'll be able to advise further in a sense. Okay. Then what if the organization is tax exempted organization and only minimal invoice is issued? Is it applicable for tax exemption for the organization? So again, we are not a tax authority. I don't think this is a fair statement that I would be able to answer this. So we are catering for across the board. So I believe this question, it would be better if you could raise it up with your tax advisor in that sense on that. Okay. So where do I find which patch am I in within V12, right? You could, I think Kevin has shared it in one of the FAQ. But if you still couldn't get that screen, you could work with your business partner, or even reach out to us to show you a little bit more detail of where to get it. But your business partner will be able to assist you to where to get it in that sense. So when will the add-on module be ready? I'll be frank. The actual the listing and so on is out. The testing site from LHGN is not up yet. It is promised. It is. We got to know that the module, the testing site would be up in Q1 next year. So I don't think I will tell anyone that our module is ready before we have done the testing with the LHGN site. So earliest possible that we can do the test, start the testing, is Q1 next year. So I would say that if comfortable, that we will be able to release more information but at least bare minimum, I would say early Q2 in that sense. Earliest, but don't take my word for it. We'll need to wait for when is the test site is ready for us to do that testing as well. Okay, so that's a little bit in terms of when you'll be ready. I cannot commit right now because we will need to wait for Q1 is a very long time frame from January to March, and we know that there is Chinese New Year in play as well, and so on. So I think early Q2 or mid Q2 would probably be the time frame, but we will need to confirm that later on once we know the exact date of the test site being out. Okay. I wonder why LHDN use 2022 account, which is implemented in 2024. It is a bit far away for duration. I wouldn't want to comment on that in that sense. We will just follow the instruction from LHDN to proceed in that sense. Yeah. Okay. So how many email address can we put into an emails address column? Like what I mentioned, I believe that the best way is to use a distribution email in a sense. So one email putting that, then it will send to multiple. So that will be a much better choice moving forward in a sense. So how long the implementation to roll out? So like I mentioned, this is meant for the connection with the. It should not touch anything in terms of core of your item. So in terms of the full duration, I don't foresee it to be a huge number of man days and so on. But only after knowing the specs and the full detail, like what Kevin has mentioned just now in terms of for now we know it's JSON and the XML. So until we get the final specs out from LHDN, we will not be able to gauge right now, right here, right now. So that this question, we have much more clarification once that spec is out, which is supposed to be Q3 this month. You're supposed to be Q4 this year, which is anyway between now and December, which as of now is not out yet. Okay, so that's a little bit of that. How do we generate QR code from Sage X3? That will be from your Crystal report, which is typically where you use your to bring down your invoices in that sense. Yeah. Okay. And I know we are a bit off already, and there's still quite a few emails that we are planning to reply. So I do not want to hold everyone for too late. So what we will do is individually for those questions we have not replied to some of you, we would be replying to you offline separately based on your registered email. And I hope this is an informative session for everyone. And stay tuned. We definitely will have another session once we have the specs and more details from LHDN and MDEC. We'll be keeping everyone posted and sharing more details in a sense. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And we will be reaching out to you for those questions which I have not answered. Thank you very much.